Planning Commission meeting. This is a regular Planning Commission meeting, is that correct? Or just a work session? Okay. Will you call the roll?
Sure. Chairperson John Craycraft.
Present?
Vice Chairperson Jason Hinkle.
Present.
Commissioners Clint Folsom.
Here.
Phyllis Harden here. James McGinnis. Bob McCool. Craig Prestisator.
Here.
Rochelle Rittmaster. Here. Tom Ricker. Assistant Town Manager Matt Magley.
Here.
And Fred Fox.
Here.
Planner.
Thank you. James did email me and told me he would not make it tonight, so don't know about Tom, and we don't. And you said Bob was not going to be
Bob
here.
went to the chamber.
Okay. Oh yeah. Yeah, I know all about that. Moving on to item number 3 of the agenda: public comment on consent agenda and non-agenda items. So this is your opportunity to come speak to the commission about items not on the agenda or that are on the agenda. Anyone?
Sandy Pennington, 3002 Micah Court. I came to give an update on how the Planning Commission wants to, or our plans to proceed on Chapter 16.
It is actually, in fact, an item that we will discuss, I think, during item 6. At least I plan to. On the agenda, which is to try to gain some consensus from the commission as to how we will proceed with the review
Could I
of Chapter 16.
respectfully request that you move that to the top of the agenda so we in the audience don't have to stay to item 6? Is that possible?
How do you feel about that? Anyone?
Fine with me.
I think I'm okay with that. I think it's going to be relatively brief so we can get on to the business we do have at hand tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we need to change the agenda at all?
Yeah, you probably should.
Make a motion to change the agenda?
Yep.
Accordingly, seconded.
Okay, we'll move. Somebody make a motion then to move item 6 to swap with ahead of item 4. Right? Yes, we're still continuing with item 3. So go ahead if you're
Now?
Yes, please.
Shortcut. We won't be discussing the setbacks and the footages tonight, then you're just discussing the procedure of how and what you're going to do, so there's no sense in
That's correct. We won't tackle.
what should be and shouldn't be, taking your time up, but I do have some valid questions when this does come up.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. No, we won't tackle any content of Chapter 16
I'll let
tonight.
you go on.
Okay. Sorry. So we'll jump back to the motion here.
I move that we move agenda item 6, staff announcements and miscellaneous, up after approval of minutes to be, I guess, consented, or to be item number 5. Sure. That was awkward, but...
So you're making it between the consent agenda and new business?
Yes.
Okay. It's fine.
Second?
Okay. Motion and a second.
Okay.
All in favor of the motion? All opposed? I'm in favor. Sorry, I just didn't vote, but
Okay.
I'm fine.
All right.
Okay. So that's passes unanimously. Wow. Well done.
Yeah.
Okay. Seeing no other comment on consent agenda or non-agenda items, unless Commissioner Sorelli would like to, or Trustee Sorelli would like to come forward.
Hi.
Mr.
Mr. Sorelli.
Call me Mr.
I goofed up on consent agenda. I did have one item on the meeting minutes.
We haven't done that yet.
No? Okay.
Still
on
the
public comment.
I'm still doing number 3.
Okay, so we haven't approved it yet.
We have not. But seeing no other, excuse me, public comment, we can move on to item 4, the consent agenda. Now is your opportunity if you
My
wish
chance.
to clarify something in the minutes.
On the rare occasion I made it through most of the meeting minutes, since this is one of the more interesting ones. There's a comment on page 6 that initially caught my eye because it didn't make sense, and now the more I read through it, I'm not sure what the comment really was covering. I guess I'd probably just recommend striking it. It starts with Vice Chairperson Hinkle.
stated that he agrees with Commissioner Press's comments,
And the need
And
that
the
it
need-
be a controlled
controlled
intersection,
intersection.
which doesn't have anything to do, from what I can tell, with the preceding paragraph's summary of Commissioner Prestasator's comments, and I'm not sure what it would have been getting at, so I don't know, the safest thing may be to strike it. But
you deny, you said it.
if I did, I have no idea what it was, and the sentence doesn't clarify it at all, so.
Okay. So needless to say, we're pulling the minutes from the consent agenda, right?
Right.
Okay.
I have a comment about the minutes.
Okay.
On page 5, where it mentions Commissioner Rittmaster, about in the middle of the page. Anyway, I think I recall pretty clearly what I was stating, and my concern was that I was concerned that, and asking about the landscaping as it would possibly be a distraction to the motorists as related to their visibility of pedestrians, et cetera. So if that could be appropriately reworded, asked if the landscaping could be distracting to motorists as related to visibility of pedestrians. I believe that that would properly capture what I had said.
Okay. Any other comments to the minutes? Nope. Okay. If we're satisfied with those corrections, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes of April 7th with revisions as mentioned.
Okay.
Second?
So that's Prestasator and Rittmaster. Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay. Thank you for that. Moving on to item 5, staff announcements and miscellaneous. Staff announcements? Matt?
Thank you. Coming up for the Planning Commission possibility, we heard from Resolute Development on the property they own. This is a property off of Colton Road near the Horizons apartment complex. They contacted staff and have indicated that they think in the next month or so they'll be bringing forward their proposed rezone from CAC to RAC. So that's something we can look forward to. And then I think as far as upcoming items for the look ahead, that's going to be the main one that we have as far as development goes. Something on a personal note for me, I've got a scheduling conflict on Tuesday nights for the next several months. So I'll make as many meetings as I can, but Fred has volunteered to fill in and take over the role when I'm not able to attend. So I just want to let the
Egad.
Planning Commission know that unfortunately I have that conflict, but I think we have it covered. So, Fred, anything for you?
No,
I think that's
Okay. So I think we wanted to talk about Chapter 16 and how we may proceed with that. And in my conversations with Matt, and of course, watching or going through hearing comments from you all about the last meeting, which I wasn't able to attend. After I had Matt and I had boldly proposed that we try to tackle once again the revisions of the land use code without the attorney present, but on a sort of on a chapter by chapter basis. It sounds as though we still had issues, and one of the main ones I heard about was that there were issues such as changes in the code that were of a material nature in terms of the setbacks and height restrictions and things that probably deserve public comment as much as anything. When you're actually changing content, it's not merely just trying to reformat it. It's actually changes. So I think we have some options. The board, I believe, sort of gave a nod to some additional resources. Is that a fair statement, Joe? About whether the attorney should be here or not, but I don't believe that the town manager is willing at this point to commit to having the attorney present at this point.
Joe Sorelli, resident of Town of Superior and also trustee. In our last meeting, I brought up the topic of the Chapter 16 review. I'd previously brought that up, but I brought it up specifically as related to what you encountered what you as a commission encountered in your last meeting, in which I understood was the first time you were using a chapter approach with an annotated version of prepared by staff of what changes were made in that chapter. And you still had difficulties, or the commission still had difficulties along the lines of the changes not being of the type that they were expecting to see, or of not strictly a legal nature, but of having to do with some issues of changing setbacks. And then the question came up of, okay, what is changed that's not in here at all anymore? How do we know if there's anything like that? And some commissioners expressed a desire for a red line or a black line version of the changed document. And so, as I believe it was left at in your meeting, was that an attempt would be made to come up with such a document if it existed, or perhaps prepare a document compared type document. I brought that to the board's attention, also suggested that the commission was feeling concerned that they were not given the tools to do the job correctly for the land use code, which is really their bailiwick, and a major change to the land use code to have all the tools they need. And I'd say across the board, 100% the board agreed with that. There was some discussion about whether there should be an attorney there or not. I think it's pretty clear the attorney can't, there aren't resources for the attorney this year, is what it appears to me to be the case. And the town manager indicated that actually many of the changes, or most of the rewrite, was not done by the attorney. He was attempting at some point to capture the changes that were suggested to him by a number of parties, and I'm not sure if he actually did all of the rewrite or whether he did all the rewrite, but it was suggestions from other people, and I don't believe a black line version of those changes exists. At any rate, I relayed to the board that I thought you guys were going to, or that an attempt was going to be made to give you something to work with, either a document compare or a red line, black line, if it existed, and you'd try, but if you didn't feel like you could do the job correctly, that you'd let us know. And the board basically concluded that that's fine, and you guys try. If you can't do the job right, just stop, and we'll do it over the right way when we can afford to do it over the right way. That's my take on where we stand on this. I'd recommend all of you, if you can stand it, we'll look at that board meeting as, if you can fast forward, just get to the point in the meeting where we are here of staff announcements and discussion, because that's where we had this discussion in that meeting. But I think that's the gist of where the board's, I'd say 100% across the board. I'm using board two ways now. The town board supports you guys doing it however you need to do it right, but that might mean starting over when we have the resources to do it correctly, if that's what you feel is necessary. That's my take on where we stand.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So I'll just open it up to, I threw out some suggestions to the commissioners about, we could take, do as you suggest, which is start over, at some future time when we have resources. We could continue as we were doing on a chapter-by-chapter basis, knowing that we run into the issues that we run into. We could abandon it altogether until some future date when resources are more plentiful. I think there's any number of options, and I just invite the commission to and the public actually to provide some thoughts, and maybe we can come to some consensus about what we should do and how we should proceed. So.
What I'm hearing is there's no funds for attorney this year, and there's no black line. And so to start over doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because if there's no black line, starting over would, I don't know if that means completely scrap the new version and start over again so that you do have a black line, or does that mean start over with an attorney present? And with an attorney present, does that really satisfy our concerns that there aren't substantive changes that we're missing? Would having an attorney here magically prevent that from being missed? And I don't know that it would. These are more questions than
Yeah, I guess
answers.
the notion of literally starting over to me was I guess I was taking completely as scrapping the new version, and I would hope at a minimum using what had been done with this version as kind of a recommendation for ways to manage that. But in the same sense, I think given that the town council was doing the bulk of that final editing, if I understand that correctly, or at least that final compiling of language, which made sense, I think, when he first kind of summarized what he did and the approach he used. It seems like it would be ideal to have him do that again, but be able to start with a clean document and create the black line version that we're talking about, kind of an edit by edit walk through the process if we're going to do that again. So,
however, with the extent of changes, would that really be a useful document for us to review? And I, speaking of conserving resources, I would hate to throw away all the resources that have already been dedicated to this. It sounds like there's been hundreds and hundreds of hours put into this already. And who's to say that next year is magically going to be the year, the money starts flowing again and everything is good? And it may not be.
I completely agree.
There may not be money next year.
And again, I guess what I was getting at is, I'll just use Jeff's name without being any more formal about it. I think if Jeff were to sit down with the existing code or the existing Chapter 16 and what he had done before, it's kind of like if you have to do a job, a creative job a second time around and basically repeat it, ideally it'll be a little bit more efficient, especially if he has that actual edited version to work with. But in this case, he will more painstakingly keep track, with his own written notes of, I'm going to do this to the existing document, step by step to recapture some of what was, as much as possible of what I had done the first time through. It seems crazy, but it's trying to address the issue you're bringing up of if he just tries to go from memory to create a black line off of or black line document off of what was there, it won't happen.
Right.
Whereas if he, essentially recreates the process and documents it as he goes, if we're really needing to have that, and I think there's certainly some legitimate concerns about not having it, that's one way to try and salvage a little bit of the time he's already put into it.
I guess I would
sympathize with both concerns.
I would like to see if there could be a way to work through what we have rather than scrapping all those hours. just because I think that's going to be a poor use of resources for the town to spend money on the same process again.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I was comfortable with the very first meeting when he was here. And I felt that was a comfortable meeting, and I felt we were making progress. And then as soon as he wasn't here, every voice that came up was, well, why? Well, what'd we do? Well, I mean, far too many questions and far too few answers. So I don't know that, for myself, that a lot of time needs to be spent outside of him just being here and walking through it. I mean, I'm comfortable enough with that process of him saying, well, this is why. Okay, this is what we did. There might be some detail lost because we don't have a black line version and know every piece of it, but myself, I guess I'm comfortable with that because we got answers, and there was some stuff that we, at the time almost sent back to him and said, well, can you relook this up and come back with a clear answer next time? And it may be the kind of walkthrough we have to do, but personally, I would hate to see him have to go and create a whole black line, another document, and spend time outside of just walking through it with us to come up with something else to go by. That's how I feel about it, that I don't personally view that as necessary.
Rochelle?
My first reaction is kind of similar to what Craig is talking about, that with him here, it gave us the context, it gave us the accessibility for the questions, and it seemed like a pretty comfortable process. Will we necessarily hit everything? Well, I sure hope we get pretty darn close. It seems like to have him recreate, and then the likelihood that we still need him in to do, to still discuss it, is kind of like then double stroking it again instead of the one path, which really is Jeff. And unfortunately, it's become very dependent on that one person. That gets a little scary. He better not step in front of a bus. But so I'm trying to remember, because I know I responded to the email where we had some options, and I know it was a blend of 1 and 2, but now I can't remember what 1 and 2 were. Wait until availability and continue the review. Okay, that kind of covers the blend of 1 and 2.
Yeah, one is the staff being involved in giving us more information about what was done. And number 2 is the attorney actually being here. So,
my understanding is that there is no black line, and a black line can't be reproduced. So that's where I'm going with this. So I guess I would want to just try to move forward. If we could get the approval of having the attorney, that would be fine, but I still think like it's been said, a lot of work has gone into this.
Yeah.
A lot of work.
But I don't see us getting through 200 pages the way we've already spent how many hours in session, and we've really just scratched it. I can't imagine what's ahead of us without having that appropriate person here. I could see us talk till we're blue at the end of the year and still wonder if we're going to be through it. It's been exhausting already.
Could we do this? Could we go ahead creating a list along the way of attorney questions? And I think the first meeting we had without him, we said, okay, let's defer this to the attorney, and it wasn't until the following meeting that we realized there is no more attorney, or at least for the foreseeable future. But I agree that if we were to delay it, it would be for purposes of having the attorney here. But I think in terms of wisely using the attorney's resources, we don't need him here for every single thing that we're going through. I think there's a lot of things that we do need him here for explanation on, but I think that we could perhaps make some progress, but keep a running list of things for him, and then maybe that could then be a meeting instead of 4 or 5 meetings that he's here for, thus saving the town money. And maybe there could be, towards the end of the process, there could be some money for the attorney, and we knock it out that way.
I guess I would say we went down that path. I would say trying to do that. And I think that still became to that use your guys' words, the uncomfortable place where we just couldn't. We just didn't feel like we were getting the answers we needed. So, I absolutely appreciate it. And the thing too, I guess, is that I think we all have come from a different comfort level of where that, how much faith we have in the staff and the attorney that what they've presented to us is, essentially complete, and there aren't large omissions or, major changes. There are things that, yes, perhaps have been tweaked, and that we absolutely should be commenting on. But it's hard to make that comparison as to what those things are without, as Jason has made clear, without that black line version. So, where we fall on this is, on different spectrums, and I think, of course, Commissioner McInnes isn't here. He's certainly been the most vocal about the process, and that, what are we going to do a good job, or are we going to, in a thorough, complete, examination of this, or are we going to abdicate it to staff and say, raise our hand and say this is fine. So I don't think any of us are really comfortable with that. One of the options I think I put on the list there was I think I used the term adopt or review and adopt it without context to the previous version, and just say, look, let's pretend we never had a Chapter 16, we never had a land use code. Let's go through it, and that's of course ignoring all the past decisions that have been made and issues that were brought up here. They're already in the code, but is that an option?
Well, it would be a clarification for me if that would meet our responsibilities. My impression is that one of our key responsibilities is to pay particular attention to anything that's changing. And that really seems to be where, if all we had to do is review the new document and agree to
on
it,
its
there's
merits.
no need for a black line at all.
Right.
It might be easier to talk about what's different, but in theory, we could just read through the whole thing and say, oh yeah, this all makes sense. But I'm assuming that one of our main responsibilities is to make sure we're aware of and approve of changes to the existing code. Is that correct or not?
Yeah, I would say, this is Red Fox, I would say that is correct, because in our process with staff and with Jeff, we actually considered a model code, and we decided it didn't have the guts that everyone had worked so hard on in the past. It didn't have it there. It was just too general. So we abandoned the idea of let's create something entirely new, and we review it on its merits. So we went back to then the idea of from the attorney's point of view, rearranging the existing code.
And I guess I just would argue that in the effort to preserve resources and all that in essence we have done that. We have taken the existing code, we have simply reorganized it to be more readable,
Right.
better organized, so that it's more useful to those that utilize it, whether it's an applicant or the town attorney to review something, or staff or whoever utilizes the code, the commission. So we didn't start from scratch. We didn't take a canned code or some, and say, oh, we're going to use this. We're taking our code, simply reorganized it into a better flowing document, and now we have the opportunity to review that, both for, on its merits, the way it's written, but also its actual content. And personally, I'm okay with that leap of faith, but I know not necessarily everybody is, and I don't. That's why I put it down. I put it as an option for us to at least discuss. So to say that we're not we absolutely, I think, somehow need to understand the changes, but I think that's where we're relying on staff, once again, to provide, here's what the old code said, here's what the new one says, maybe wordsmithed, or, and content-wise, I'm not sure we should change, a height restriction or a setback without going through, obviously a public comment period and all those things. But, that's just my 2 cents. So.
The only other, this is a little bit into the details, so I was kind of hesitant to bring it up before. One other thought, and I'm just curious about Matt's take on how practical it would be in terms of something in between a black line and what you guys were doing last time we met, would be to essentially go through the existing code, prior version, and essentially map sections as much as possible on the new. And the point of that being, should provide a clear indication of what and where things were deleted or combined, and particularly specifically things like table values and things like that cropped up. It's such a huge document. I don't at all believe that's a simple thing to do.
Right.
But I think it could be a really valuable kind of peace of mind thing for those that are particularly concerned about understanding where pieces of the original code have gone or may have been deleted. Because that's the biggest. That's the thing you just can't argue with when you go through that document. You either need to place complete faith in your painful process of having to go through and compare the two.
What kind of a product, what are you looking for?
I would imagine
some sort of
basically
an outline?
You could do almost the safest thing, honestly, would probably be to take an electronic version of the original document and literally map probably the paragraph by paragraph, what have you, where those go. So if you had either I'm imagining like a commented Word document typically has comments off to the right, all the way through, and it would basically say,
this
whole section went here, this paragraph went here, this word went to here, or even if it was a little bit more general in terms of not only did this paragraph get moved to this new section, which I know there's a lot of, there's just complete structural reorganization, but by the way, there's wording changes. Please see the new document to see exactly what those are. It's something short of a full black line, but something that makes it. There'll be the thing that would be in that we don't have direct access to is there would be large sections that would just say deleted or combined with such and such a section into this new section. If we decided as a commission that we needed some additional level of detail, I think, on what had been done, it's something that came to mind.
Yeah, my feeling is if you decide...
I personally am in the same boat as I think at least 2 or 3 of us are of being comfortable with what's been going on so far. I'm mainly trying to get the rest of the commission on the same level.
Let's, for discussion purposes, say that we're able to come up with that type of a document. Is it felt that that would be enough for... There's some commissioners who feel no matter what, unless the attorney's here.
To be fair though, I think there's the biggest discussion we got into 2 weeks ago didn't have as much to do with Jeff being here actually as it did with having what we usually have in the way of a black line. That was really the gist of that conversation. And so having Jeff here is not necessarily going to solve
I guess I would say
that issue.
If I were going to go through the entire document, the newly written document, that I would be more comfortable actually having Jeff here, so that as those questions come up, we can answer them right away. We can, or he can go back and research it or whatever. We can actually have a dialogue about it instead of, that's to me just more efficient. And so,
as far as the revised code goes, Jeff, as far as the outdated language and the whole reorganization of the chapter, that's what Jeff did. And then, once we had that document in place, we went through, as a committee of staff, with Jeff and Fred and Phyllis, and went through to the revised, reorganized document, went through to see if there was anything that was missed, and made any recommended changes that we felt the Planning Commission should review. So if the questions for the commission largely are based on the reorganization, then I think you're going to need Jeff here to answer those questions.
It'll go quicker. But
As far as the significant substantive changes to the chapter, there weren't many.
no.
And there were some articles within the chapter that weren't even touched. When we get to the district, water district, and those type of regulations. So we've got, the process has been painful in the beginning because those are a lot of the, direct land use type setbacks and zone districts and those type of things. But as you get in later in the chapter, it's going to be a lot smoother. But
I think from what I'm hearing is we've got kind of two camps. We've got those that feel comfortable with attorney review being present and moving ahead on that course, and I probably fall into that camp. And then we've got the others that feel like that having a black line is really the only option, and without that, there's a fear of missing something that's been changed. And I think even with the attorney present, there would still be that lingering concern that something is been omitted, that either they don't remember, it wasn't pointed out, and then months, years down the line, somebody discovers, realizes that it's there. And
I think that's what happens when you go, if this were a document that we're going from 30 pages to 25, we'd figure out the way to handle it.
Right.
When you go from 300 to 200, this is where the scale of this has become so challenging, and so leaving so many question marks out there, I think.
Go ahead.
As a resident who was just involved in a land use issue with the town board, and having been through the first two meetings, one with Jeff here and the other without Jeff here, I also would like to suggest sort of a hybrid consideration of a potential hybrid solution to this. This was intended to be about a 6-week discussion at about 3 hours a week, 18 hours of attorney time to have him sitting here. I don't know how much the town pays him, but it seems like that's several $1,000s worth of expense we're talking about to have his presence here. And I found his presence to be really important. I did not view Jeff as simply an organizer. I viewed him as being integral to the whole process and very valuable in terms of explaining intent. You'll recall the second week when we discovered what appears to be a mistake, basically a 180-degree mistake in terms of what was characterized as a major and a minor modification. And we residents brought that to your attention, and we didn't have an attorney here to clarify whether or not that was intentional or that was simply a mistake. That is critical. And then last week when material modifications were made to the code and we didn't have an attorney here to say what his intent was in submitting that, I find that to be very problematic. So I would suggest it is not a lot of money we're talking about in terms of the significance of this chapter to the entire code. So I am frustrated as to why this town, there are still street sweepers out there on the street. I fail to understand why this whole discussion is riding on what I think is simply under $5,000 worth of expense. So I throw that one out there. At a minimum, I do believe we all deserve an original code that is highlighted to draw our eye to where where any change or any deletion was made. If I had that highlighted code at my disposal, then I know to search for how it was deleted or how it was modified. So if that's all that happened, is that staff or attorney did that, so that I know where to look and where to put my eye, that would give me some peace as to the fact that I've dealt with everything that's proposed. So I, as a resident, suggest we find this, what seems to be an inconsequential amount of money to have the attorney here, as well as have at least a basic highlighted version.
Yeah, and
I'd just like to make a,
go ahead.
due to the economy, the town went through the painstaking process of coming up with hundreds of thousands of dollars in budget reductions. It wasn't an easy process, and a lot of things had to be sacrificed to reach the amount that was targeted for those reductions, and this was one of those items that took a hit. And you know, it may not seem like a lot of money, but in the process that went through, it every little bit is significant when we go through that process. So.
Well, the good news is there's not an urgency to doing this, right? And we have an existing code that suffices, and you know, at the moment it is the law, so it can be utilized as it has been, you know, successfully for the last however many years, and so to give us the ability to do it the right way, if that means we shelve this. It may be just the reality of one of the things we've got to do. So
I think my main concern would still be getting buy-off at this point by the commission that town attorney's presence is sufficient, or if not, what else needs to be agreed upon.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting that just having the attorney here is sufficient, because
the last thing I want to have happen is that, you know, the board approves the next fiscal year budget for Jeff to be here, and lo and behold, we show up for the first meeting, and I don't know whether it simply needs to be a majority or not, but if we are unable or unwilling to proceed because we still have issues. So
I think we absolutely need to solve it. And I wasn't meaning to suggest any other path at this point. I think you're absolutely right. We need to find consensus as to what will be an acceptable process and what it will take to do that. And so you could highlight the code, but it's still, what happens is it's been so significantly reorganized that you still, without reference points, as Commissioner Hinkle has mentioned, to know where to go back and look would take you an immense amount of time. So, as you guys know.
But I like the notion of maybe at a bare minimum, in case there is a quasi-automated way to do this, if you could at least go through and highlight specifically things that have been deleted, it'd be better. It'd be one step better, I think. Because again, that's kind of the root
report.
Well, not even just a report. I mean, as long as you keep it electronic, I suspect if I were having to do it, it's easier just to create a PDF, Word, whatever version that's highlighted, stroke. You know, you could run through and just do strike throughs on stuff that's been deleted. That's usually the most intuitive.
But that doesn't cover,
in between.
you know, what we talked about, what we kind of got stuck on 2 weeks ago was, like, let's say you did that, and we had what was deleted, but we don't have what's changed.
Well, but that's where you've got to be able to place either you're going to place some faith in staff to indicate things that have changed, or you're not. If you're not, then you need some version of an objective black line. But
Well,
again,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I'm just saying that a version that just shows deletions would not be sufficient. A version that shows deletions and changes, and I know that then that starts to become a pretty broad a pretty broad statement, but that's where we really did get hung up.
No, it's an
Isn't it?
interesting point. I think that a deletions report on its own is valuable because
Yeah.
I think we've accomplished the change piece of this almost. At least we have the process to understand the change piece because we started that process.
But if that's
right?
continued through the other
Right, if we could continue through
articles.
that through those other articles with the change process and have a deletions report, I
Sure.
think we might be fair, probably as close as we're ever going to get without exactly as you suggest.
I would basically say that if somebody isn't happy with that, then they're only going to be happy with literally starting completely over.
Right.
And therefore, I would have no qualms about approving a process that included something like that.
Is
And
that-
my only hesitation for requiring it or insisting on it is not having a very good feel for how much time it would take somebody to do that. I'm hoping if we dropped it all the way down to just things that just don't show up, it'd be easier, but it's all relative.
Yeah, we were just talking about how long we thought it might take to produce that. Now, just off the top of my head, I was
This is an
thinking 2
example of
months.
something I wanted to try.
Right.
If we had the 2 Word documents, if you did a kind of a set, you start at the top level, you got sections by sections, you know roughly where those sections went. If you pull those out as sub documents and run a compare documents on them, there's some chance that it would automate a lot of that. Again, as long as you keep it to, if stuff just isn't in the new one, then that's what we're going to highlight. Everything else that's just edited or moved or reshuffled, we'll simply leave alone. Okay.
I would say give us an opportunity to look at that. I honestly have no idea how long that would take, but I think we're open to trying.
Yeah, we can try.
And I was
Give
going
it
to
a try,
say,
and-
if you do find those Word documents, bounce them to me. I am more than happy just to spend even half an hour or whatever trying a couple different ideas out. I'll let you know if anything works. But
Okay. And
We could, when did we say that we would try that maybe we try it on a couple of chapters or something to see how that pops out, rather than doing the whole thing at
that's
once?
part of what we
Wouldn't that
talked
come up
about 2
last
weeks
time?
ago.
Yeah.
So essentially, if you had it.
To the extent you have at least somewhat correlated
electronic
chapters
versions of both
those
chapters.
sections.
yeah.
And the other nice thing, I guess, again, depending on how concerned commissioners are about it, the nice thing of having the electronic documents is if there's a section that you know is near and dear to your heart from the original document, you can yourself go through and say, all right, I want this paragraph, and I want Word to tell me where is that paragraph in the new document if it doesn't show up on the whole. And if there's a table that you're really worried about the data in, you can go through and have it just highlight things that are different. So anyhow, I think just adding some other resources for people to be able to use to identify changes or deletions may help. But otherwise, if someone made a motion right now, just to clarify, if somebody made a motion right now to proceed with, as we had been with Jeff President, I'm all for that as is.
I just have a question.
Sure.
I'm confused at right now. Give me an answer,
Sure.
somebody. As a citizen, if you have a recommendation that you want to change the land use code book, where do you start? Do you start with the board here, the planning commission, or do you go to the committee? Tell me, because I need some changes.
To the trustees, or
Huh?
you said to
You
the
mean to the committee, you mean
Town
the
staff?
people who...
Town
Yeah, I'm
staff?
talking about the committee, the 4 or 5 people that presented you with this document here and the changes. Where does a citizen go now that wants some changes in this document to begin with?
in,
I mean-
in the new version or the existing land use code?
New,
In the new document. Okay.
the one we're working on, the one that we're worried about an attorney when we spend $46,000 on a sign that's unwanted out here, and several $1,000s worth of flowers that you look at and die. I think the attorney's more important than both. And I'll tell the town board that too. They got money for other things, they should have enough money for attorney. Why don't we get a bid to find out what an attorney would cost to help us through this, to get this changed the way you people want it, and when the citizens want it. It seems like we're just
Well, I think we're all
Wasting
headed in
hours.
that direction, but it's a budgetary issue that the board obviously would have to address. That's why we're not discussing
Well, I
that
think
piece of
that they
it.
kind of indicated they'd do
And I-
that if you people were running up against a stumbling block, and it kind of looks to me like you are right now. You're not taking advice of what the committee recommended to you. You got questions about this change and that change. I got several changes in here that I should discuss with either your board or having to hire me an attorney to come and talk to you, and that's ridiculous. I should
Well, the
be
issue-
able
but
to
it-
start with these people.
It sounds like the issue is one of timeliness.
Pardon?
It seems like the real issue right now is one of timeliness. At this point, there's a good chance, if I understand things correctly, it'll be fiscal year 2010 before we go down this path, unless we really want to pursue it more with the board and town management. Is that your concern, that it's going to be 6-7 months before anything?
This land use document wasn't done too many years ago and cost several $1,000s then. It ain't been done too many years ago. I bet it wasn't. What do you think? The previous land use code book was done 6-7 years ago?
Well,
Six?
it was originally adopted in 97.
Right. but-
Yeah.
So we're talking
12.
We're talking 11 going on 12 years. And they said that they dropped 200 pages because it was duplicated. I mean, that's what I understood. And
About 90
They
pages,
shortened it
90
because
pages.
it was duplicated in several places. Is that true?
Essentially, the attorneys shortened it because in the reorganization, there was language that they felt was not needed. So that's how it was shortened.
Okay, that's...
But the content's the same. Essentially, the content's there because we went through it.
And to get back to
Fine-tooth
your
comb.
original question, as far as who to go to, you can always bring those items up with staff and we'll forward them on, or if you can come to the meetings, that's even more beneficial because you can speak directly to the planning commission.
But that still don't change the issues and to be brought forward and the reason why they should be changed.
Well, I think he's suggesting you could go to staff and explain what it is you're concerned about, and they could bring that to the commission, or you can come directly to the commission during the
I've done
meetings
that
and do
before
that.
too, you know
Well,
that. I'm
we are
confused
open.
right now the way you people are putting this.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
What we should do and what we shouldn't do. Why don't we just vote on it and figure if we want to get an attorney here and forward it to the town board and go on with our business?
We're getting-
Because
We
this
do,
is
we're trying to
wasting my
speak for
time,
somebody
your
that isn't
time,
here.
and these gentlemen's time too. That's all I can say.
Trying to get there, George.
I understand.
If I can add something about 90 pages, as I did the math, and Matt, correct me, we went from 200 pages roughly to about 110. It's hard for me,
We went from 298 or somewhere in that range to 199.
okay.
Yeah.
But a magnitude of 90 pages in the context of a 300-page document, I find it hard to imagine that we just deleted repetitive stuff and that the essence is carried through into the new document. It's possible, but yet as a resident who it is imperative that you and that concerned residents make darn sure no substantive essence has been deleted. And that is by necessity a painstaking process. And there is no shortcut to that. So I go back to, again, my personal recommendation, if you're into taking recommendations, is that we do not proceed without the attorney present, and that we do not proceed without at least a basic document that denotes, one, the deletes, and two, the material changes.
Can I throw out another option?
Sure.
Chapter 16 is so large. When you do something of the scale and the reorganization that's been done, it's difficult just in that in itself. Now, in 2007, we did modifications to the sign portion, the Article 4, Chapter 16. Another option is to go article by article and just to not
Make changes to the existing code?
Exactly. Like we did with the sign code.
But that doesn't work. You can't take the existing articles as they're organized and do what has been done to this.
I don't think
if
he's
understand.
proposing that. I think he's just saying,
If you go article
Just-
by article with the new one, then you're back where we're.
No, I mean with the current one.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
But then you're back where we're at. How do you deal with deletions in the
No,
old
no.
structure?
no, he's saying take the existing code and, I mean, you're not necessarily looking at the new version, the newly drafted version. Just go through the existing code and go through it on line by line
But then
basis.
you're
and-
throwing,
You're
effectively
throwing it all
throwing
away.
everything away. that
He's
was
just
done.
throwing out another option.
It's just another option.
So, well, I guess I'm inclined. I would be inclined to say, well, I think we're in this consensus that we would like. We feel this the attorney's presence is imperative. I do, and that we, whether purely a deletions report plus the staff's noted changes is, as we've been proceeding, is sufficient. That I would certainly be comfortable in that process. I think that would give us what we're looking for in a realistic way.
My only question would be, do we need the attorney here every single night? We meet and go over it, or do we accumulate questions and then have him show up every other meeting, cutting his time sitting here listening to us banter about certain things, and then we put together something and say, okay, the attorney, that's a question for the attorney, and move on to another article and see what articles we get through. I guess that's the only other way I would look at it is, does he need to be there every minute that we're discussing every article?
I would agree with that. I don't think it's necessary to have him here at every time.
I mean, it'd be ideal, certainly, that he was here all the time. But
Yeah, I've been on the planning commission for what? We've been on for 5 or 6 years now.
Yeah, wow.
And I think the attorney's been to every meeting we've ever been to.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
suddenly now because of staff or because of budget situations, we can't afford to have the attorney present.
Yeah, there's been
Then-
nights when he's been asked one question all night. and then-
Right.
So,
Exactly. So
Yeah.
he's, to get to a point where fiscally where we can afford to have that again, seems like the realistic thing. And there's no sense in I don't know. My feeling is sort of reiterating what George said, which was, what are we doing? Or continue to spin our wheels and discuss this, and we just don't have the resources to do it. So until such time as we do, but once we do, that's is that the process we should take? Right? I don't know. And on the side, if you guys want to work, try the automated search functions of
Yeah, and I don't at
the
all.
technology. If that's a viable option, I guess we could report on that at some future date and see if it was really worthwhile. But I don't know.
Yeah, only other issue, I guess I'd be curious to follow up. I'm not sure whether the discussion between maybe Trustee Sorelli could respond to this. Is there any point in clarifying with the board whether or not funds could be allocated to keep the process going this year? Or is that a
At this point, it seems as though it's been
is
up.
that a decision that's been made?
It's been up to the town man. At least my understanding, the way I understand it, it's been up to the town manager to decide on the budget cuts. This was an area that was determined to be necessary. What is it?
Presumably something else would have to be cut.
Is there urgency from the board's perspective to continue this process in 2009?
Joe Sorelli, Town of Superior resident, member of the board. I can't speak for the board. The board did not make the budget cuts. They were briefed on them. I think probably approved them, although specifics of things like an attorney would not be present at planning commission meetings was not something that was considered. I don't think the board has taken or has been inclined to, thus far anyway, direct that the town manager change his decision regarding whether council should be present and find money to be spent some other time. Way this year, the board, I believe, would support the commission if they were of the took the position that in order to do this right, they need the attorney present and they should wait until he can be present. I think the board would support that position if that's what the commission thinks. Whether that would be this year or next year remains to be seen.
What I would,
That's what I took from the last meeting.
yeah, thanks. What I would throw out is to propose to the board that if we can come up with a specific number. However, I can imagine something like 6 hours. A couple full, painfully long meetings, let's say, where the town council's time we think would be sufficient for us to finish this process up. I'd also highlight that I think there is an awful lot of value in doing it this year, or put another way, potential risk in putting it off by 6 or 7 months, and that whatever vague memories he has of exactly what he did and why are going to get fuzzier and fuzzier the longer we wait. It's already gotten to be
Well, and some of the-
uncomfortably long.
Some of the process was to reduce the town's exposure, too, to having problems or having suits against the town
Lack of
over certain
clarity.
things. So, because of the lack of clarity, right? So, I mean, you've got the you're leaving it hanging on with the other code, right?
Which has,
Which
again, sufficed
Keeps that
for,
exposure going.
sufficed to a certain degree for the last 12 years or
Right.
so, right? So,
Right.
Well, I certainly am comfortable making a request of the board, if we want to make a motion that way, to consider, allocating the resources, both to do the deletions report and and to allow the attorney to be present at the review meetings, starting as soon as possible, to complete this process. Barring that they plan for that to occur in the next fiscal year, so that it can be budgeted for and planned for, as an alternative, I guess. Right? Does that make sense?
The only thing I think I would like to see is a consensus here.
Yeah, and that's
So
the
that
point.
if one or two commissioners show up and then they say, well, this isn't enough, that the rest of us say, well, too bad. I mean, if we go to the board and the board says, yes,
Yeah, I don't want.
we're willing to go down this road with you, then I want to stick to that road. I don't want to jump off that road again.
Yeah, right. And because I don't want to spend another meeting fighting about it here, about the process either.
Yeah,
agreed.
Either we need to come to consensus that that's the way we want to go, and we just have to live with it that way if that's what we want to do, or we wait until we can come to consensus,
Right.
before we make such a request. So, yes.
But do you want to hold off making a proposal to the board until we meet next and poll the members that aren't here?
I don't know that we're going to meet next unless we do it specifically for this.
Right, and you have a majority, so if you're
Right.
unanimous.
Okay, just didn't
Well,
know.
what I'm wondering, though, is, it sounds like no matter how we proceed with or without the presence of the attorney, we need to get a better feel of what can be done to either show us the strikings and some essence of the changes, and some of it similar to what we reviewed in the articles and how things were noted, but then also the deletions. And I think we need to get our arms around what that looks like and get our level of comfort with what that delivers to us, and then we might be able to come up with an appropriate proposal back to the board of where we think we can go.
Okay, so if you don't feel like let me back up. I think that Commissioner Hinkle and I were discussing the possibility of, if we had a deletions report, okay, stuff that was literally struck out, articles that were removed or redundant. They could in one section they may have been struck out, but in another section they exist. even though they may have been redundant. And then utilizing the staff process, which we've been using the last few times, or at least the last time,
The commented.
the commented
Yeah.
version, which shows the changes and the material changes. Does that
And the
does
attorney.
that meet what you're asking for, or would you like? Do we need to see that?
I think if we have those, then I think we can end up having more constructive sessions, and then we can be more concise in what our needs would be regarding having Jeff on occasion. So I don't know if the one predicates the other and that it's an all deal or no deal, but to go through all that and then not have Jeff, I think we're still going to be left.
My opinion is that the attorney should be here for all of the review.
I would say, I think we should request that he's here for the whole thing. If the town board wants to come back and say, well, what about this, and throw an
I
option
think
back at us, then
we
Okay,
just found
sure.
that it hasn't worked. So
Right.
I guess I would just propose that we would.
yeah, let them make a decision if they come up with a different
We have
answer,
the
then
attorney
let's request that he be
for the
here for
review. I
every
mean,
meeting.
compared to the amount of hours it took him to do the draft, sitting here for a few hours for 2, 3, 4 meetings, whatever, is minuscule compared to the amount of hours he's put into it. So,
Yeah.
No, I'd be on board with what you're suggesting.
what do you think?
Yeah, I would be on board with that. I would hope that we would be very productive while the attorney is here and
No
not
question.
get off onto
Yep,
other
do your homework
things
and
do
be
your
ready.
homework and really be prepared if he's going to be sitting here and we're asking for his time. I
Agreed.
just don't want to be off onto some other thing that
And-
has nothing to do,
With the task at hand, right?
Yes.
Right. And arguing about it, right? About the process as opposed to arguing the merits of what's actually in the document,
Yeah.
right? I understand. So, what do you want to do?
We need a formal motion, just asking for the deletions report and the attorney be present at the meetings that we discuss this.
I guess the other piece of this is we haven't, I'm not sure we've clarified with, you expressed some concern about how you would do that, how you would generate that report, right?
Yeah, we'll have to look into
And
it.
so-
Yeah.
Well, we make the
That-
request.
We can make the
of
request, but we also need to understand the feasibility of that.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They may come back and say,
Okay.
can't do one or the other, or both.
I would just throw in that if I, at a bare minimum, had electronic versions of both documents, that would be sufficient for me. It'd obviously be great, especially for everybody else, if the
They were
deletions
available.
report was available. But at least I can go through if there's some particular section that catches my eye in a new
Right, yeah.
document that I'm curious about, or when there's a comment that says, by the way, this section was deleted, there's an easy way for me to
Could you provide
see
both
that.
documents to the commission on
Well,
a CD or something?
That I know you can do in a
I emailed those out on Monday morning to the planning commission. Did nobody get
I
it?
never got it because it must have
Oh,
been way
really?
too big.
Yeah.
at
It
that
was
time.
about 7 megabytes, I guess.
I don't know what
I
our.
didn't.
Nobody got it?
I didn't.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. On Monday, yesterday
Monday
morning.
morning, yeah. went out 8
It
a.m.
could have gone. If it
I
went to my
didn't.
home email, it's possible I got it, but I
Okay.
didn't.
No, I didn't.
I did not receive it at the
Try
office.
again.
So.
Okay.
Please.
Or provide CDs of it, I guess.
Okay.
7 meg should make it through.
Yeah, that's Word
If they're
documents.
public and you can just put them on the website, that might.
Yeah, we could just
that
download
might
them,
solve
too.
the problem for people too.
I'll email them tonight.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so
But those are just the straight documents. They
do we
are.
need a motion?
Yes.
I think we do.
I think we really ought to vote to make a commitment.
Right.
And again, I guess I mainly brought that up because I'm comfortable making the commitment as long as I get an electronic version where
Somebody-
I'll search
like
through
to-
stuff I care about myself.
Would you like to wordsmith this proposal? Or,
I'll try. I'll just be winging it.
okay.
I think I would move that as a commission with respect to review of Chapter 16 Land Use Code revisions, that we agree to proceed with both staff commented articles of the new document and, if possible, a deletions report of some sort based off of the original document, and most importantly, some level of support from town legal counsel, either full-time if possible or part-time if necessary.
I would request this full-time.
Just
That
request
we-
full-time.
Well, I'm not requesting this. This is something we're going to commit to
Oh,
as a commission.
Okay.
That if we can at least get part-time support from town council, from legal counsel, that we are satisfied with proceeding with that process, and are comfortable
I guess I'm not sure. I'm
continuing with
comfortable.
the next article.
That I'm comfortable with part-time. In terms of having him here for the meeting, with him here part-time.
The way I look at it is I think we'll be able to make some progress. It won't be nearly as efficient for us, but if it's seen as a financial imperative that we only have him here very specifically when we need him, I can sympathize. I guess another way I would put it is if doing that allows us to continue this year, it's well worth it for the quality of the review that we'll get. I think that covers everything I was worried about. And I guess we probably more specifically need to decide where we're going to pick up where we left off. I know that
Well, I think
the
we
section we had from 2 weeks ago, we didn't even really get into very far, other than once we hit the table, we hit with the quantitative changes. That was a roadblock. I'd probably
got
at
through
least start off
articles.
there. We
Prior
covered
to
a fair
that-
amount of ground in the other two meetings and
Yeah.
before that, so I'd rather not revisit those unless someone feels like we have to. Because I think once you have the deletions report, it's already going to be a jumble. You're going to have to go through that as a completely separate document from what we do meeting to meeting.
But is there potential that some
By
of
the
the,
nature
some
of
of
the
those
edits.
deletions occurred in those chapters?
But we
were
always
already-
have had the opportunity to go back and revisit them. I just don't think it's necessary to just
Okay.
literally start over
Okay.
with the change reports.
Okay. Fine with that. So start where we
I would
left off.
proceed as of where we were at 2 weeks ago.
So did you actually get through the articles last week?
We made it through a few pages at least. And once we hit that, I'd have to look at the document. It felt like it was maybe halfway through.
Well, I thought we got through Article 6.
So
Okay,
Start with
yeah,
Article
I
7.
checked the meeting notes. If that was, this is it. If
Which
that was the
article were
case.
the tables in?
6.
I would not say we got through 6 then, no.
So review Article 6.
The document already exists. I mean, ideally, we'll cruise through it pretty efficiently, at least past where we were at. Yeah, I think we touched on a few things after we had a prolonged debate about process and.
I don't think there were many changes after we had the long debate, after the discussion about the height.
Well, but then
Yeah.
it still then begs the question, what is this redo of the land use code about? And when you encounter the substantive changes, then that begs the question, is this the right way to do it? And that's where we're going to start bogging down again. If we
Well-
don't somehow make a decision, what do we do when there's actually a substantive
When
change?
we vote for this motion, my intent is that you are either comfortable, if you're comfortable with the process that we followed up to this point, and what we're proposing to do from here on out without having to go back and start at the beginning with a similar process, then that's what you should be voting for. If you're not,
Well, I can vote for saying we
you
need
can always come
to
back and revisit.
go from
stuff.
300 pages to 200 pages, but I think that it's not fair to ask me to, or any commissioner, to say, okay, changes were made to this table, and as part of the process, you're just supposed to accept those changes, right?
No,
I mean,
no.
okay.
No.
And we did specifically reject those changes in case that wasn't clear. At least that's the way I took those comments 2 weeks
Right.
ago.
Okay,
We have
that's-
already rejected those
They're
setback
in a
and
list
roof height
that
changes.
accomplish at a later date.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think
What-
that's how we would continue if that came up. I think that's your point, is how would we deal with that? And I think that's how we would deal with that. We would just say no to that, and
So I'd table it?
yes.
Okay.
I would still, go ahead, Joe, come on up.
At risk of intervening, I don't know where you were at. Joe Sorelli, Town Board, and resident of Superior. I don't think you should, Commissioner Rittmaster's bringing up a key point, that you don't lose the forest for the trees. The job of reviewing this revision in particular is whether you buy into the substantive changes.
No question.
And also, before you were in a work session last time, so I don't think you really do business at a work session. You're probably accumulating comments. And so, because at some point you're going to need public comment on whether revisions should be
That's in the
made.
And I was actually just about to mention that public comment piece, because I know it was important in the discussion last week, or 2 weeks ago. But we would, essentially, we're going through a draft. The theory here is we're going through a draft of the code to make comments on for changes. Then we would go through a public comment period of a public notice and public hearing and all that. Whether that's on a chapter by chapter basis or a article by article basis of the code, or certain series of articles at a time, to give the public and the residents an opportunity to comment on those in a public forum, and then before we even made our recommendation or adoption to the board, right?
Correct.
Okay. So we're in a draft review mode.
Yeah, I was gonna
That's
say, I
all
don't-
we are at the moment.
Yeah,
right?
I think, I guess if in case there's a need for clarification, though, our meeting 2 weeks ago potentially would have been the same type of meeting, the same level of official decision-making, of which there was little, that we're proposing doing up until this public hearing, though, is we're essentially having work sessions to compile all of our comments and
Yeah.
and work through our review until there is a one, maybe two session public hearing that makes it an official request. So again, in terms of how we start, if all of this goes through, how we would start next time around, I think to the extent you still have concerns that we didn't finish that last one, then let's just plan on
Yeah,
bringing it back up. And if
I wrote
if
down
there's
Article
comments,
6, so.
yeah, if there's comments that we skipped over that you're interested in hitting, we'll hit them.
Okay,
But I suspect we'll be able to get into the next article if that's the right way to look
right,
at it.
so we
let's
want to
get
be
comments
prepared for
together.
that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Are you good with that?
I think the only question that's looming is, does everybody support Jason's motion in asking that the attorney be present part of the time, or do we need to discuss whether people are only comfortable with asking him to be here all the time?
I'd straw poll you on that. I mean, what do you think?
I haven't decided yet. I'm flexible enough.
There's no offense.
I'm
Not
on the
after
fence.
this. Not after all of this
I'm
debate.
flexible. I think we are all more productive when he is here. That would be by far my preference. Is that a reasonable answer for straw
And that's how
polling?
we're intended to be worded.
Yeah.
It basically, what I somewhat suspect is that that getting him here is as much a logistical process challenge as anything. In other words, that I think the town manager essentially challenged the board with, "Hey, you had me do an awful lot of budget cuts. Are we really going to start arbitrarily picking things to put back in the budget, and then or not?" And in this case, it's an issue for the board to decide: do they want to go through and do another, albeit minor, presumably, budget revision to make this happen? Is it enough of a priority or not?
Don't do the
And I
August
think if they
planting of
do-
pansies.
Yeah, and I think if
You
they
know?
do, hopefully they'll realize that let's just do it the right way, an efficient way,
Well,
and have it here. So
Yeah, I truly think
I guess I was
there's-
just trying to be clear about what we want
Yeah.
to request. To see.
Yep. So, anyways, I'd stand by what I.
Do they want them part-time or do they want them full-time?
Well, no, and again, the wording should be our strong preference is to simply have him here for the remainder of the review. If it allows it to at least happen this year, though, my preference would be to proceed with him. I would say a bare minimum commitment of 6 hours of his time.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing that out because I think if we went through the rest of this and compile concerns for Jeff and 2 months from now or whatever, we finally get it for a couple meetings in a row, that should be enough.
I think I'd prefer that he was here, that our request, our motion, what we're agreeing to here was that he be here full-time. And then if the town comes back and has an alternative, then we sit down and discuss an alternative. But I would be comfortable, more comfortable, I guess, in requesting that he be here full-time. And I understand that there's going to be articles where there's no change, but hopefully we can just blast through several of those in a night while he's here. Some of the simple stuff that we don't get bogged down on it ourselves. And we understand that he's here and he's being paid to be here, and we need to go through it in a judicious manner. So I would prefer that we ask that he be here, when we're discussing
I'd accept that
this.
change.
I would prefer that he's here full-time as well. However, I would be okay with him not being here.
I guess I agree with that statement, If he's not needed, I don't want to see him here, but if it's felt he's needed, yeah, I'd go along with that. Just to get this moving.
Let's make it official. Let's make it official.
I'm
one
a
way or the
full-timer,
other.
so
Okay.
Let's do the straw for I guess, requiring that
Requesting?
but requiring, if they're going to approve this at all, that it be full-time or nothing. I mean, that's really what, you're asking for full-time.
Well,
or
I
not.
think we're going to ask for full-time, and if there's some other option, as I think as Greg suggests, we can come back to us and tell us.
Joe's here.
That we can consider it.
You can let him know that we would consider
We didn't
An
word it
alternative-
that way, but
an alternative action. But, yeah. Okay.
so I'm sorry. Did you say you were still sitting on the fence, or are you
Oh, I want Jeff full-time.
full time? Full time.
I'm comfortable with asking for full-time
Okay, so 4 and 2, right,
and keeping it simple.
or whatever. Yeah.
It's just,
Okay. So
kind of hard to believe that it's that big a deal.
okay. So did you get the motion? If out of all that we move that the planning commission agrees to proceed on the review of the Article 16, Chapter 16, if we're able to continue the process utilizing the staff process that we were previously using, providing a deletions report somehow, some way, and we would get support of the town legal counsel for full time to continue the review, and that we would start pick up where we left off, beginning with our reviewing again Article 6. Does that make sense? Is that essentially it?
At the risk of wishing I had spoken up, I actually specifically was not requiring the deletions report, because I have faith that staff will give it a college effort, and if it works, great. If not, what I do want at a minimum is to have those electronic versions. That would be that's all I would
That's what
truly
you're asking for.
require, and I would defend that we continue with the process from there out, even with just the electronic versions.
Well,
Just to
I
be
guess
totally clear.
the point
attorney
the point two again of this was so that if we're going to come to consensus, it's that we're well buying into how this is going to, that we're committing to proceeding this way. And
Exactly.
do we feel the commissioners who are not present tonight would demand that deletions report?
Well, I don't think you can do that. You can make a judgment as to whether or not you're being fair to the commissioners, but I think trying to imagine.
No, I understand. I just threw it out there.
Jason, what is different about having the... Huh?
Can you say your name
Sandy
again?
Pennington. What's different about having what you're requesting? I have the hard copies of the 300 pages plus the 200 pages, and
What's-
now I have to go...
I can efficiently search for sections that I'm concerned with, or if there's a comment from our notes that we're going to be getting from staff that such and such section was moved from here to there, or deleted, or major
You can
substantially
search
edited.
for it.
I can go back and, in an automated, efficient fashion, find what's missing or changed. I'm not saying, I still strongly encourage staff to take a hard look at making this electronic deletions document, but I I am comfortable proceeding with the process I was already comfortable with the process we were using, honestly. Having electronics documents will make me feel that much more comfortable.
As a resident, I'm not comfortable with that. I currently have 2 complete sets. I find it very onerous, very time-consuming, and very hit and miss. I am not trained in what this should be, and I just fear that on something so important, something so easily could slip by. For example, I do believe that had I, as a resident, not brought up on that second Planning Commission meeting the miswording of the major versus minor, I don't have confidence that you folks would have picked that up. It was near and dear to my heart. It was near and dear to an issue that I had been involved with, so I caught it.
The only thing that would have helped, sorry to interrupt, but I've thought through this stuff over and over again, the only way you could objectively, painstakingly avoid that kind of an issue is starting completely over and doing a very detailed black line section by section process, which we could do, but we seem through the discussion this evening to have refused.
I think we all accept that as an impossibility. That is why I strongly suggest at least working with the old version and starting with the deletes, drawing my eye to what's been erased. I, as a resident, really require that. Then, if it's a second version that says material changes, right? Deletes and material changes are what I need my eye drawn to. This is so critical. I fear that we may end up having a code that is adopted as law that has mistakes in it. And
we already have one.
It's also a living document. It's not meant. If we did find a mistake, it could be changed as early as the next public hearing.
But to the extent that it disadvantages a resident on a particular topic, and in something that has to be addressed in a timely fashion, it would be most unfortunate. So I'm trying to minimize the chance of that happening. So I really, as a resident, would like that delete version and that material change notation.
And I support that. From my personal opinion is that we really got to try to come up with this deletions report. I think it's critical. So.
Well, let's either include it in this motion that we're going to vote on or not.
That's how it's written now, the way I wrote it, and just said it. So.
Okay.
So the question.
Do you want to be any more specific about what that is?
No.
Okay.
I mean, there's enough. It's going to have to be subjective to some degree anyway, because that's just the nature of this process and the way this thing has come down. But there's still some faith that we have to put in.
Exactly.
So, but I think, as you said, the old college try is what we're after.
Yep.
Right.
Any other discussion?
No. So if that's your motion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We have a motion.
Okay, second that motion.
So, motion by Hinkle, second by Prestisator. Any further discussion that we possibly have on this? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? None. Okay, thank you. If you pass that along to the board, we would appreciate it. Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 6, new business, review of the town's energy self-sufficiency plan. Does staff have a presentation?
Yes, and we get to talk about something besides Chapter 16, so that's good. The town had a goal back in 2008, which was a Live Green goal. Part of that goal, a portion of that goal, was to adopt a plan to achieve energy self-sufficiency within 10 years. Very ambitious goal, one that we started the process going through with conservation efforts, programs, some energy efficiency upgrades. and this plan that's being proposed. First thing we needed to do as part of this 10-year plan was to determine the amount of energy that the town is currently consuming on an annual basis. As part of that, we did audits on 7 of our 8 municipal buildings that we have. The one building that we were not able to do was the fire station that's located on Cold Creek Drive here, and that was simply because the billing, Xcel Energy provided the audits for the town, but the billing for this particular location is in Rocky Mountain Fire Authority's name, so we are in the process of getting that changed over to the town. Once we have that, we'll go ahead and do an audit on the building. So we made some assumptions for that 8th building, but we got a good idea of the total consumption that our buildings consume on an annual basis. Of the audits, it was determined that we use over 3 million kilowatt hours of energy, electric energy, and 32,000 therms.
When you say energy self-sufficiency, you just meaning the town operations itself,
Correct.
right? Okay.
So we're talking buildings, street lighting, traffic lights, parking lot lights, those types of energy consumption. We're not talking about residential household or businesses in this plan.
What about vehicles?
Vehicles are addressed in the plan, but they are, as far as the plan goes and the energy consumption, vehicle hours or lane miles are not calculated in the plan. So the amount of energy that the town buildings consumes equates to over 3,000 tons of carbon annually. I also mentioned we, as a town, adopted, the Boulder County Consortium of Cities adopted a greenhouse gas reduction plan that we've agreed to participate in. And so these efforts will also go towards meeting those goals of reducing greenhouse gases throughout the county. Continuing on with our annual energy consumption for town operations, the town currently has 770 street lights. Majority, all of those street lights are owned by Xcel Energy, and we pay a base rate for each light. It's calculated that we use approximately 347 kilowatt hours of energy annually for those street lights, and the town's traffic signals annual energy consumption is roughly 30,000 kilowatt hours per year. This slide shows the total annual consumption of energy, electric energy, by the town over the year. You can see that the largest...
Stop treating the water.
Hey, yeah. The largest energy consumer is the wastewater treatment plant at roughly 2.3 million kilowatt hours annually. That is in large part to the pumps and that we run basically 24/7. And then the next largest would be the water treatment plant. So the plant operations are roughly...
What's the annual kilowatt, I don't know if you have any idea about this, what the annual kilowatt use of a typical Superior home is? You know?
That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head.
I was just trying to get a baseline for what.
It's got to be less than
Each-
10,000.
Well,
Yeah.
town hall is
It's
roughly
got to be less than the fire
5,000.
station.
Town hall is roughly 5,000 square feet. So I'm trying to think if we have a building that's close to the average household size.
I would say it might be close to the fire station. maybe
Right.
slightly less, but
So that's what I was saying.
so
less
five,
than 10.
5 to 10,000, somewhere in there, depending on somewhere. Okay.
But a house has washing machine.
Right.
Well, the fire station? No washing machines or?
Not the fire station up here.
No,
No, we were
no.
talking about I'm sorry, the one on Indiana.
Well, that doesn't have anything either.
No.
That is just some computers.
Yeah, the
My
parts.
guess would be it's in the 40,000 kilowatt hours range
40.
For the year.
for the year.
A residential home,
But
40,000?
that's just off the top of my head.
I
can
think-
take a look. And,
Yeah, I think it's more
I
like
was just curious.
Maybe.
Yeah, no, it's a good question.
4 to 6 kilowatt hours
Yeah, what's the over?
per household. That's my guess.
Okay, sorry. Didn't mean to get on.
Yeah.
too
No,
much
that's
of a
right.
tangent there, but
I'm interested too, so I'll take a look and see. So after we did our inventory of all of our lighting and energy uses for our buildings, we were able to calculate a figure of almost 3.5 million kilowatt hours of annual electric energy consumption, which gives us a good goal as to be 100% energy self-sufficient in 10 years. As part of those audits on the buildings that we've conducted, we've already started doing some conservation efforts. We've started lighting upgrades to either CFL or T8 light bulbs. Next, we've done the majority of our buildings. The two buildings that remain are the water and wastewater treatment plants, which we'll see over the next year take place. We've converted all of our holiday lights to LED. We've been in the Excel Energy Wind Source program for a number of years. In all of our offices, we've started moving to Energy Star equipment, installing, mostly this is all low-hanging fruit, lighting, occupancy sensors, automatic faucets, windows. So we've already started that process for our buildings, which we're looking at a combination of efforts between conservation efforts and renewable energy sources, which we'll get to, and energy-efficient upgrades to our buildings.
Jason looked up on his iPhone here, the average kilowatt hours of a household in the United States is 8,900 kilowatt hours.
All right. Sorry. Technology can be
You had to know.
good.
Now, we don't know the source, and the internet's always right, so we're sure this is
Right.
correct.
There you
but-
go.
Thanks. We upgraded our traffic signals in 2007 to LED. All of our traffic signals were upgraded, which resulted in annual energy reduction of 187,000 kilowatt hours. Benefits of the LED lights for traffic signals is they're 90% more efficient than regular bulbs and requires a sixth of the maintenance of your conventional bulbs. So we're able to reduce our costs in energy and maintenance. And
The maintenance being the life of the bulbs? or the
correct, yep.
Terrific.
And I think the payback for these was in the 3.5 year range for return on investment. So we've begun the process of updating our parking lot lighting. This is something we can control because we own the lights, so we don't need Excel Energy's approval. We received a grant from the Governor's Green Initiative grant for $25,000 in partnership with Boulder County to do these upgrades. The locations include Town Hall, the Parks office across the street, Community Park, which has the most lights, the basketball court, which used to be the inline skate rink, just off Indiana and Colton, and then the two pools.
How much money would we save if we stopped testing that blasted alarm?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Just moving on.
Flood season.
These upgrades reduce our energy consumption annually to 32,000, which is a significant reduction from the 200 and something we were at. So it's these type of upgrades that I think we're going to see with our parking lot lighting upgrades, if we can ever upgrade our street lights to LED or something more energy efficient than what we have currently. These will all start to come together to get us to the goal that we ultimately want to achieve. As far as renewable energies, we've started to look at this as a significant player in reaching our goal. We did an RFP to install photovoltaic systems on all of our buildings. We received proposals back to do 7 of the 8. The one building that's not eligible is the Grasso Park Bungalow, which is also the building department. And the reason for that is because it's on a state historic landmark designation, so can't alter the look of the building for that. So we took that one off the list. But I think we still get a good project and significant amount of energy produced. We estimate that we're going to produce from these 7 systems 343,000 kilowatt hours annually. The largest systems that we're going to be able to install are going to be at the plants because we have land available to do ground mount systems.
I had a quick question
Yeah.
while you're on that. I was surprised to see that I guess there really wasn't any economy of scale. If anything, it was the other way around, that some of the larger systems cost more per kilowatt hour to install than others. Do you have a feel for that? I'm assuming it's the additional, power management involved in a larger system, but it's still really surprising to me.
The larger cost for
It's
the
more
large-
per, there's less efficiency for some of the larger projects. Not a lot, but it's certainly not there's no obvious economy of scale, and that surprised me. Because one question I had was, there's all these little piecemeal installations going on. Doesn't it make sense just to do one big array or 2
Right,
big
like
arrays
a
by the
solar
water treatment?
farm or
Yeah, just
something like that.
Isn't that more efficient? But apparently not. If you don't know, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I
I'm just
don't
curious.
know
Okay.
why that is.
Yeah, it seems like at the water treatment plants, why are you putting them on the roof at all? It seems like there'd be a lot higher cost to put something
To
on the
install.
roof when you're doing a ground.
Although I
system.
have heard that's not true, actually. The nature of the ground mounts is such that they don't save money. If anything, they usually cost more. I'm not sure.
And it depends on the type of roof and the angle of the roof and the angle, if there's any slope on the ground mount systems. We're fortunate that all of our roofs are at a good pitch, good angle for these type of systems. Plus, they're standing seam roofs, so they're easier to install. And then the one ground mount location for the wastewater treatment plant is close to I think a 30% slope, so it's got good exposure to the south, plus so they don't have to do a lot of infrastructure improvements to get the ground mount system on. So, but I can definitely look into your question. Get back to you.
Yeah, when I'm going to guess that once we get through the presentation, I have some very
Sure.
specific questions in there too, because some things just jump out that don't look right. So they may want to go back and check some of the figures. Yeah.
Okay.
But we'll get to that once you get through this.
Okay. So these systems we anticipate will generate 11% of our total annual energy consumption, which is decent. We are limited by, Excel has limits on, they have categories for the size of systems. You have a small category, medium category, and large category. We're limited to the medium category currently, which means we can't install anything larger than 99 kilowatts, or nothing over 100 kilowatts at any of our sites. So it's one of the restrictions we have.
Why?
Well, they pay rebates.
Oh, you mean to qualify for the rebate?
Yeah.
You
We could install
something
something,
bigger,
right.
you just wouldn't qualify for the rebate.
Right, we wouldn't get any rebates, yeah. There's discussion that Excel might increase that cap to 500 kilowatts. So if that ever happens, we'll take advantage of it, I'm sure, because we'll have access to the rebates. Something that we've been looking at is possible partnership in wind turbine. the large wind turbines, which you see, it's got to be the right location. Steady wind of 10 miles per hour usually is what.
It's always windy here.
Yeah. But it's not the right kind of wind. So you see the wind farms out on the eastern plains of Colorado where you have the steady wind, or up in the Wyoming-Colorado border. One large commercial scale wind turbine can generate 2.9 million kilowatt hours of energy, which is
Megawatts, yeah.
approximately 83% of the town's total operation energy consumption in a year. So, and the cost for one of them is large but achievable, I guess, at 3.5 million.
What does that energy consumption cost the town in real dollars?
The
3.5 megawatts.
yeah.
There's a figure on page 9. Is that the total? 511,000.
Yeah, 511,000. Correct.
Is that just for electric?
Yes.
Okay.
So in a year,
Yes.
we 511,000, and so
That's all buildings.
right. I understand that.
Yeah.
Right. So
And street lights.
you answer my question.
The obstacle here is finding the partner to where we can build one of these. It's got to be a wind farm, and we've been talking to Xcel Energy about the possibility of partnering with them. They are looking at a possible program that cities or counties or universities could partner with.
If you build something like this, you're basically just putting electricity onto the grid.
Correct.
Essentially offsetting what you use, right?
Yep. You won't see it here in the town of Superior.
Right. It's not pumping the electricity
No,
straight.
it's
to
not
Superior.
pumping. Yeah, but the thought is you're offsetting the same amount as you consume.
Xcel offers, at least residential customers, the wind source option. How does that, I guess, value for renewable energy costs compared to all these other? You have a really nifty table on page 9 with all the effective costs. You know what wind source cost?
I'm not sure I understand your question. As far
I think
as
we pay. I don't know if anybody else. I did it years and years ago, so
Yeah.
I forget. But I don't know if we pay a fixed rate every month or if it's just a slightly different kilowatt rate.
you pay,
But either way, there's got to be some comparison to what these numbers have, because it just, again, the economies of scale thing keeps biting me. It seems kind of silly to be doing lots of local stuff. If Xcel, if as a state, as a country, we're trying to do this in general, isn't there some more organized, more efficient way at a larger scale to have Xcel basically develop more wind, what have you?
yeah, and right now they don't have a wind project themselves. They buy their renewable energy from private companies that have wind farms, like at the border.
Okay.
And I think that's what they're working on.
Well, but again, they've had this program for years
Right.
where you can pay a small additional
Right,
amount.
and the town participates in that program too, in their wind source.
For all of our electricity.
For the buildings, just for the buildings.
I guess my main general question is, does it really make sense? Does it not make more sense to do that at a larger scale to accomplish the same purpose of offsetting
Well,
non-renewable energy versus building all this infrastructure? Even with all the, I know the rebates making incentives generally
Yeah.
make it substantially more appealing now, but is it really cheaper than just letting Xcel do it? at a
there's
large
more
scale?
to it than just the complete offset of the energy we consume. I think
Okay.
there's a lead by example for the community.
What if it's a bad example?
Well,
You know what I mean? I mean, efficiency is efficiency. So, I don't know. I'm really curious what the dollar comparison is. And there was a real. I don't at all mean to knock down what was done here. I really like a lot of the numbers. The fact that all of these different projects get compared, dollars per kilowatt hour. That's great. I'm a little dubious that it doesn't make sense to me that it's efficient use of funds to accomplish the goal of using renewable energy sources at these small scales. But again, even just dollars wise, it doesn't show up that way here. You've got 100 kilowatt stations that cost over $2.50 per kilowatt hour, and all the small ones that are a fraction of that cost half that per kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
So I don't trust my intuition, but I'm curious.
And the solar systems that we're installing, the town, the paybacks, they have a long payback, but the town will start receiving where Xcel makes payments to the town for the energy that the systems produce.
In like a 10-year time frame or so.
I think it's longer than that. So, I mean, it's something to consider when we're looking at.
Yeah, that's true. It depends on your window, I guess, in this case. Because if you have a 20, 30-year window and you really think your photovoltaics are going to continue providing at that point, then it really amortizes and then some.
But that was the question, I guess, that ultimately I was trying to get to. And we can jump into it now, but tell me if I'm doing the math right here. But we spent $511,000 on electricity, right? And we're going to pump in some dollar amount of infrastructure, new photovoltaic, solar and or energy efficiency credits or expenditures, right?
Mm-hmm.
Totaling.
The total for the photovoltaic.
Maybe we should just talk about consumption for the purposes of what I'm going to say. But, so actually producing electricity.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to produce about 10% of our own electricity, which would save about $50,000 a year. In round numbers, $51,000, right? We're going to spend how much on the solar systems?
We are spending approximately $900,000.
Okay, so doing that math, right? You're at an 18-year payback, right? We're just round numbers, right? Does the system have an 18-year lifespan, or somewhere in there are you having to reinvest a capital expenditure that would increase your payback? You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Is the system a 15-year lifespan? Or is it a 30-year lifespan?
And in 5 years, are the panels going to be half the cost?
Well,
you can't look at your opportunity cost in this. I mean, you should, but I'm just stating from the point of, yeah, exactly. But yeah, you're right. 10 years from now, when you're ready to replace them, will they be half the price?
No. Is the same system that's $900,000 today in 5 years? Is it gone down to $400,000 because they're making all the panels in China?
And we can. So you're saying we theoretically could be buying them too early?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Well, we can do that analysis, but you see so what's the lifespan of the panel, right? Mm-hmm. And or does it lose its efficiency over time? Does it become less efficient? Right. So you're not actually saving $50,000 a year. Oh, after 10 years, you're only saving 80%.
Yeah, there are degradation.
Yeah. Normally, when they're quoting these, they'll say for a 15-year lifespan, your average is such and such.
And they may have already factored all this in. I don't know. I was just saying, okay, if you had a 15-year lifespan or whatever it is, I don't know if you know.
It's minimum 20.
Okay, minimum of 20. Okay, so 20 years. So you're about the time of the lifespan, you paid it back. So are we really? The question is, are we really saving? There's two issues, I guess. One is, there's a conservation issue. That's important. I get that. There's a tangible benefit and intangible benefit to the society and all that by doing this. Mm-hmm. But from a tangible, or a financial perspective, does it really make sense? Right?
It's a long payback time.
It's a long payback time. And then in the meantime, you also have the maintenance of the system in there that we haven't factored in. That's an additional cost on top of a capital replacement cost.
When the roof leaks, you got to pull the panels off. And stuff like that.
Right. Yes. So anyway, I was just looking at it from a financial perspective. Is this really a good deal for the town?
I would say yes, but not looking strictly from a financial.
Yes,
Perspective.
I recognize that's not it's certainly not the only issue on the table. It was just my question about looking at it from a financial perspective. You think it's a good deal for the town in other benefits?
Yes.
By meeting the goals as stated, or what's
To achieve our ultimate goal of being 100% energy self-sufficient.
I guess my question is spending that kind of money over an 18-year payback a good investment to try to achieve 100% energy
Well,
efficiency? Because to achieve 100% energy efficiency, you should be spending 10 times that, right? Which would be...
well, this is just one portion of it.
Then that combined with the turbine, with your
And the conservation efforts.
Right. Okay, so...
that's the only way you get your break point.
But that's how you get... Right, I was just trying to find out what the break point was.
And that's part of why I brought up the wind source thing. Is effectively the wind source thing is a broken up version of everybody gets a piece of the turbine. The way I understood it.
Yep.
I mean, we're choosing to subsidize
Correct.
wind energy. So that's, I think, in terms of how I would be interested in seeing numbers for that, or hopefully you see that included in this to the extent it's brought to the board. It'd be nice if it could just be somehow made a comparable line item on here. I'm realizing as I look at this table that all of these dollars per kilowatt hour are based on an annual consumption of a certain chunk of energy, which is good for comparing them apples to apples, but doesn't necessarily let you compare it to other alternatives.
Okay.
So I have some questions. I might as well start rattling them off. So in just this cover memo where you kind of summarize things, on your first bullet, let me just try to understand the installation of solar, the photovoltaics, right, is really not that we reduce the town consumption, we offset it by 11%. So I think that's important that we understand the distinction between offset and reduction. We get true reductions, for example, when we're going to the LEDs.
We're turning off the lights.
Right, or turning off the lights, or power cycling things off when they don't need to be on. But when we're making solar installations like that, then that's really where we're offsetting. And I think those kinds of terminologies need to be carefully understood and then used in the proper fashion. So the first bullet is not a reduction of the town's electrical energy consumption. It's just that we'll be putting 11% back into the system which is an offset.
Yep.
So that,
and in the case of a photovoltaic system, you're actually using that. You're actually using the electricity you generate on a local system.
but are we, or are we just putting it back into the grid?
No, we're using the...
It depends how they wire it up. You can wire it.
Well, you can.
It only makes sense to wire it so that if you're overproducing, it goes back into the grid. I would assume, especially for these 100 kilowatt class.
And ideally, you
systems,
want to
it's getting wired
use
that
everything
way.
you produce, right? Because to put it back onto the system isn't efficient. The most efficient use of the electricity you generate locally is to use it.
Sure.
Right?
Okay,
Putting-
if that's
just-
yeah.
So
Okay,
just think
so-
about that though. When
yeah.
you're- right.
All right. So we may actually be
Because you can sell it back to. They have to buy it back
Yeah,
from you,
but we're
they're
not-
buying it back from you at a wholesale cost.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you're not getting a retail benefit. That's correct.
So we'd be reducing the town's electrical energy consumption from outside sources.
Exactly.
Okay. So
It could be clearer. It's not necessarily wrong.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm trying to understand that. Okay. So thank you on that. So
But-
then, yeah.
But I think your point is actually well taken. That we're reducing. What'd you say?
offset.
We're offset.
Yeah, in that situation, we're offsetting, which then takes me to the comment or the question I have on page 5 of the actual document, you guys, the self-sufficiency plan. And then it's a talk here about solar installation, so maybe you guys have helped clarify for me, because I thought we were putting back into the grid, in which case it says here, a photovoltaic system is a way to guarantee reliable and uninterrupted power at a time, da-da-da-da-da. So it seems to me that it needs to, maybe a clarifying statement that the intention is that we actually are going to capture and use the electricity somehow, so that if the larger grid, if I'm understanding this right, if the larger Excel grid is overtaxed and having issues, no problem, because we have our own panels that will be actively drawing from.
Unless it happens at night.
Uh-huh.
We aren't storing energy.
Right.
There's no way we're putting.
Right. But this was kind of talking about, I think, so that town hall doesn't shut down, with a brownout or something. So if I'm understanding it right, which is great, maybe a clarifying statement that has because I think most people think in terms of you're putting back into the grid, but if in fact we're actually retaining it locally, so that we actually do have an active system, even if another system is going, brownouts. That's very powerful. That's great.
Do we cover the pools at night?
That's a good question. I do not know.
Yeah, a little electric guy coming out
Yeah.
would be very interesting. And so then because it comes out in the numbers, and these numbers in the financial analysis, the way they wing around so wildly, would be worth maybe looking at again. In particular, what jumps out to me is the North Pool versus South Pool situation, where we are roughly.
Did you catch their explanation in the notes on that?
I read it, but I guess I'm not
The
understanding.
tennis courts
courts
there.
there.
Big old, very bright set of lights.
So all those lights on the tennis court.
Right, but if I'm just looking at that, we're looking at an 8 kilowatt installation and an 18 kilowatt installation, and one is costing $13,000, and then for roughly doubling it, it's going up 4 times. Am I missing something there?
That was my question too. Why
Yeah,
the larger ones are more expensive than the smaller ones.
I mean, that's hugely,
In that case, it's all rooftop, so that's up.
how could that be a 4 times factor in the capital cost when it's really only roughly doubling from the 13,000 at North Pool? You double it, you're at,
8 kilowatts versus 18 kilowatts.
yeah.
Well, and I think it's and I have to look at it has to do with Excel rebates. They have different.
looks like different financing.
Once you get over 10 kilowatt
Wait,
size
didn't we
system.
say that the North Pool consumes more because of the tennis courts?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but that's,
see,
this is done because of available roof area, not to.
Oh,
try
okay.
to
Yeah,
maximize
that,
it.
I'm
the
with you.
north,
Okay.
the north.
Sorry.
The North
Yeah.
Pool is
Very small
Yeah,
building.
yeah. Okay.
south and north facing
The
roofs.
exposure, yeah.
So, and again, I guess I'm just asking you
My
guys to go back
assumption
and...
is that it has to do with Excel Energy's different categories. They're in 2 different categories: the small program and the medium program.
But these are all under small.
No, the 18 kilowatt.
So we need to
system.
split the South Pool up into 2 buildings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
would just,
yeah.
I would
Do it
just
for
revisit that. I'm
$26,000
just very
instead of
surprised
55.
that,
I'll follow up for you.
yeah, I mean,
But that's
that,
my assumption. It has to do with the
yeah,
Excel Energy.
it increased 4 times over that, and it just jumps out as just
Let
not,
people pee in the pool.
just not looking right.
But yeah, it's another painful example to me of if it's the rebates that are motivating a lot of this. There seems like an awfully good chance that these larger scale installations
Get
are a
kind
little
of
harder
wiped
to
out.
defend.
Yeah, they start to run up quite a bit.
Or at least the altruism factor is going way up. One of the two.
Yeah.
Can I just ask one sort of procedural question? What is it you want from us?
Well, I'm taking.
We asked for this.
I know we did.
What do we want from us?
No, we asked to review stuff. The question is,
And this in particular.
no, we asked to talk about the green building.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Requirement standards, not necessarily the green. This is a large capital improvement project, and obviously we should review it. Just
On the plan or on the solar systems?
On the plan.
On the plan. Well, the goal is to review with the Planning Commission and the Recycling Conservation Advisory Committee, note questions as we're doing tonight and respond to those, and to take comments that will be forwarded on to the
Okay.
board for their.
I think we're giving those along the way, right?
Right.
Okay. Thank you. As an advisory. Okay, got it.
I have a question about the energy audits that were performed. I just went through the whole energy audit and climate smart program for my own house. Big education there. What we opted for was air sealing, duct sealing, insulation, and not any solar or any kind of energy production. It was more of energy savings. And so I see a couple of items in here where you talk about HVAC, but I think in a building like this, what was anything looked at in terms of air sealing, duct sealing, insulation for buildings like this? Probably not as applicable at the pools, but what was done here?
The audits looked at the HVA systems and the lighting, plumbing, windows, and any type of, as you mentioned, air sealing that we could benefit from, or upgrades to our HVAC systems. And those are all noted in the audits.
So is that
One of the benefits we have is, well, this building was remodeled in 1999, so they didn't find a whole bunch of those types of things that needed to be improved. And we found with our HVA systems, most of them are 2005 or newer, so there were some recommendations that we could look into, but they were very minimal.
okay? Good.
Just getting to the streetlights,
Mm-hmm.
the 770.
Yeah.
Is it up to the town to upgrade those lights to the LED bulbs as opposed to Excel wouldn't? They're not going to buy off on that, huh?
No. Well, I shouldn't say that so quickly. There is a consortium of
They
cities.
own 'em.
They own them, and that's how it is in the majority of the Denver metro area. There is a group of cities that's working with Excel to see if we can come to some agreement on what type of upgrades we'd like to see, who's responsible for making those upgrades.
Get some economy of scale of purchasing larger
Correct.
quantities of bulbs and whatever, right?
Right. And what the rate of energy that each city would pay once those upgrades are made. So we're working with Excel through that. It's going to be a long process. It's been going on for almost a year. I wouldn't expect any results anytime soon. But
How many Excel guys does it take to change a light bulb?
I have
At
a question.
$1,500 a piece.
I have a question on Excel. They don't upgrade their lights in there when they're like changing things out. They just keep going with what they got, right? So they have to. A light
They have
bulb-
an
well, it
incandescent
takes
bulb,
more
they're
than
gonna-
just changing out the light bulb.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's a mechanical thing inside. It's
Right.
electrical. Okay.
So so the bulb itself doesn't have its own
Yeah.
resistor or whatever it is, transformer or whatever, right? I mean, it's going from
It's not simply.
yeah, essentially it's going to low
It's going to low
voltage.
voltage?
So does it have its own
Oh, that's
transformer
that
or whatever,
transformer.
right?
Yeah. It's
Oh,
It's-
And each bulb has to have its own transformer.
it's more than just replacing.
Yeah,
the
it's
bulb.
More than a
Yeah.
bulb, it's a fixture. It's a fixture and a bulb.
Right.
within
Exactly.
it's the component within the
Cabinet.
street fixture, right? Per se. Okay. Well, I was just looking at it as I don't know why necessarily you'd want to go and replace $4 million worth of
Right.
of
I would-
street lights if you could replace the bulbs at $1.1 million and achieve 90%, the 90% efficiency, right?
Right.
Yeah,
So-
that's powerful.
That's better. That's certainly a better payback period in energy. I mean, that's as good of energy efficiency as you can get, right? You talk about reduction in consumption. 90% is as good as it gets.
Yeah, it'd be
right?
nice to make sure that the group we're working with, this metro group we're working with, isn't going down the wrong path. But hopefully, they're not. Because that hit me too when I was reading through that. It didn't seem like it'd make
There-
sense to bring up
I mean,
the
there's-
solar powered option.
There's not incentive.
We're looking at all options in the plan.
Doesn't seem like there's incentive to Excel to do that because they're
No,
Yeah.
exactly.
getting revenue
Yeah.
on 10
Kill
times
this.
more consumption of electricity. So
And this was solely for the town, the solar option that was thrown out there, just to give an idea what the cost would be if,
Yep. Not
oh,
saying that
solar
number.
powered streetlights. Oh, is that what the $4 million number is?
Right.
Oh, okay, I'm with you. I'm sorry.
And
so
the
that would
group-
be
But it is an alter. But what you said still stands. It doesn't
Yeah.
make sense to spend that much.
when you can achieve
When you can
90% of
get
the savings by only spending $1 million,
And there's LEDs will last forever.
$2 million.
and
spending $2 million, and you've got yes, exactly,
And-
and that you got 100%, or you have 100,000 hours
Yeah,
on
look
the
at,
average lifespan of an LED bulb, right?
look at the reduction of kilowatt hours. It's roughly, 3 times greater.
and that's a typo in the plan.
Oh.
I'll just mention. It should be 312. I think
Okay.
it's listed as 912, so.
Oh,
And
the-
just for
the-
clarification to Commissioner Hinkle, the group is looking at LED or similar type technology.
Got it. Good. Good to know.
Any other questions on streetlights? Just the slide mentions some of the things we're looking at. The motors at the two plants, which are large energy consumer. There's possibly improvements we can make there. HVAC systems were mentioned in the audit, so we'll continue to look at those and new systems that come out. Lighting upgrades we're doing, equipment, and then any new technologies. Geothermal is one that's talked about.
Do we have geothermal source around here?
We'd
Or
have to
just
have-
ground source heat pumps?
Yeah, we'd have to have a survey done.
Light
to
a
see.
coal seam on fire.
Well, I was wondering about the coal seam. Could we take advantage of that somehow,
Like
right?
parts of Pennsylvania, right? The
Well, there's coal seam fire right up the road.
oh,
so-
is it? Okay,
yeah.
see?
Yeah.
There you
yeah.
go.
So, but we
See it smoking once in a
continue,
while.
we'll continue to look at new technologies as they come out.
Aren't the variable frequency drives, looking into that, isn't that kind of a win-win? Doesn't it also extend the life of fans
Yeah.
and motors?
Yep, exactly. And, yeah, at the plants, that could be a huge improvement that we do, definitely.
Yeah, kind of a double bang for the buck.
Would you do this, Matt, on a replacement schedule, or would you do it even though the motors are running and they're fine? You dump them, or get rid of them?
Well, we'll have to look. We'll have to look to see what the cost is, and determine if we want to do it as needed, or on a replacement schedule, or do them all at once.
Well, on the VFD, it's not purely about the motor itself, right? It's on
Power supply.
it's on the controls as well, right?
Yeah, you'd have to have a step down.
Well, the control itself says I have no or low consumption. I'm gonna. Right. Yeah. It's not gonna keep the compressor compressed all the time.
Let's see. And the fleet, which Fred brought up earlier, decision's been made to, just what we talked about with the motors, the fleet has been determined to replace per the replacement schedule. So as a vehicle comes up in the replacement schedule to be replaced, it'll be required to be replaced with the most fuel-efficient technology that's available at the time. One reason into this is we do not have the infrastructure for compressed natural gas or hydrogen or that type of technology. So if we had if we had something, then we could look at doing conversion or replacement sooner, but
It seems as though the town should take a hard look at the real benefits to flex fuels, particularly ethanol. That the benefits don't seem to outweigh the costs when it comes to the use of ethanol.
yeah.
At least in terms of how it's produced in the United States with
Right now.
corn, as opposed to other places where it might be composed
Switchgrass and-
of. Well, even they say switchgrass. I just heard this talking about this, but that switchgrass or corn or something, you're really using about the same amount of energy to produce 1 gallon. As you say, there's no real net savings there, besides the fact you have to transport it and all those things. That when it's produced from like sugarcane, the amount of fuel or energy you get from a gallon is 7 or 8 times the amount. It's a much more richer production or something. So, but then you're having to transport it from locations where the cane was grown and processed or whatever. So you know, but between the chemicals that are required to insecticides and other whatever they are, phosphorus and whatever the stuff that's
The
going in the Gulf of
fertilizers
Mexico,
to
fertilizers and all that
create
stuff,
the
right?
crops that are
Right,
going to
that-
be converted, yeah.
Those benefits don't seem to outweigh the benefit of using ethanol as a fuel source.
Right.
The consensus seems to be growing.
Yeah, it's not a strong case to be made yet.
And the nice thing about replacing the vehicles as they're scheduled to be replaced is we can look at those on an annual basis to see what's the newest technology, if it makes sense for us, if it's the cost benefit is there. So that's the plan for the fleet.
Is that federal grant something that should come around this year, or is it longer?
It was submitted last week. What we're being told is we should expect that this year.
Cool.
So, and
Can I come park my battery-powered car over here and try to boost up?
we
It's a long walk home.
the 3 locations that we have planned are at Community Park,
Oh, really?
one here at Town Hall, and one over near the marketplace. Opposite.
That'll be funny.
And there'll be 2 stations at each, charging stations at each location. So, and then the conversion of our one hybrid vehicle to a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. So, I'm excited about this one. I hope we receive the money and we can get those installed this year. And then next steps. The plan is to move forward with the installation of the solar systems, our parking lot lighting upgrades, looking at partnerships in the commercial scale wind turbines, continue to work with Excel on our street light improvements. And then our conservation efforts that have been identified through our audits and pursuing new technologies that we see over the next 5 to 10 years.
Can I ask the dumb question back on the fleet?
Sure.
The charging station,
Yeah.
is that free?
Yeah. Well, it's
It's solar powered.
yeah, it's solar powered.
So you'd have to meter it some other way if you
Right,
didn't
but
want it to be free.
I'm a consumer, I have my car, I go there, I plug it in. The infrastructure's been built by the town, and it's charging
welcome.
because it's getting renewable energy from the sun, so it's a free deal.
You can use it at night all you want.
There are some charging stations out there that aren't solar powered, but they charge you a fee to use.
That's what I was thinking.
Like in
No free
downtown
lunch.
locations.
Right.
Except for Superior.
And
Sorry.
depending on how successful,
You can have a line over there.
So that's what'll get everyone in
Yeah.
the marketplace, right?
There you go.
Come get your
Be a
free
new business trend.
plug-in.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Economic
You could have
incentive
just
right there.
Plug in your cars
Yeah.
and fuel up. You have to stay 8 hours. But
Yeah.
You get a full charge.
Well, that's a lot of shopping time.
Shop
Isn't it?
till
I
you
mean,
drop.
Is that the average
Liking
time on these vehicles, is 8?
I have no idea. I just made that.
I think I'm trying to. I've heard numbers on the volt. can't remember. I think it's more like, I mean, it's kind of like your cell phone or anything else. You get most of what you need in like half an hour or an hour at the most.
Okay, cool.
But if you want to really top it off, it's probably 3 or more.
And, if it's a really successful program, you can always look
Go
at
crazy.
expanding it. Once we have the locations. And I think that's it as far as the presentation, but if you have more questions on the plan or comments or questions, I can get back to you.
So yeah, the one other thing I'd throw in is I was sitting here staring at that table a little bit more. If you can get the lifetime, reasonable estimates of the lifetimes on the solar installations, it'd be really easy to compare this with our number because we're paying at $500,000 a year in Xcel Energy payments and whatever our annual consumption was. It was about 14 to 15 cents per kilowatt hour, and so in 10 years we'd be spending about $1.50 per kilowatt hour. So that's about what the break even is on these. So if they all last 20 years, you're up to $2.80, and every solar installation we're doing is paid for itself effectively. That's ignoring maintenance and all of that, but it's a first order.
What's the inflation rate on the electricity?
Right. So there's probably some. If you want to get into that's the next level of detail is what's the 20-year average on Xcel's energy rates. Presumably it's a little higher than last year. I don't know.
I would think it's less, actually. Less consumption this year than.
Yeah, we just received notice that they're asking for an increase, but
Yeah, I was gonna
we'd
say,
have
every
to
time
go
I
back
hear
and
about
look
it,
at that.
Anyhow, it'd be an easy additional if you had that number for these solar installations, then you could basically either list off a break point in years versus lifetime, whatever, or total dollars you're in the black over the lifetime. Because I think all of these more than pay for themselves.
That's a good point. We can add that too into the chart.
I made the point, I guess, about the financial comparison, right? When looking at it in its kind of its entirety, an analysis, because I think, and this isn't really I don't know if this is really our purview or not, but to look at financial issues, but over the life of the system, how much money are we really going to save, right? With maintenance costs, inflation, opportunity cost down the road, where you theoretically could buy it, some estimate. Could you really buy it for half that in 4 years? Is that a realistic possibility? I don't know.
I think unless the subsidies have a potential to go away, you're probably pretty safe as far as.
Yeah, I mean, the subsidies are going to go away when the market really kicks in and these things can be produced and installed very cost effectively, right? Just because that's the nature of the market, right? The point is, there are other costs that I think you should just be cognizant of in evaluating this, because it's and then compare that to the other benefits, societal benefits and conservation benefits and all those things, and say, okay, what's really the tipping point, for us? Is the financial piece is more important because of the economy right now, and we should wait a little bit, or no, it's really important to take advantage of this stuff. Of course, you're getting subsidies, you're getting grants, and let somebody else pay for it, although we're all, I guess, paying for it if there are federal grants, things like that.
Well,
But
and there's federal tax credits for the larger systems.
I don't know if I actually made any sense there, but just
You can take
about,
advantage of now.
what's the real break-even point, or what's the real benefit, cost-benefit analysis, basically, right? If you're not going to, you have to look at all of the costs when in this evaluation, and you can drill yourself down to the point where you go crazy too. I understand that, but
Is there a proposed schedule for implementation on this, or is that to come?
Well,
all the small stuffs.
but you're planning to do the PV installation right away, right? Isn't
Well,
it
on the
essentially
smaller
approved?
systems, we're still working on the financing of the two large systems. And the two large systems are, close to $700,000 just in and of themselves. The 5 smaller systems are approximately $90,000 to do the 5 smaller. So the plan right now is to propose to install the 5 smaller ones right away, and work out the financing for the 2 larger systems. There's a number of different programs that we're looking at. There's a government program for basically zero interest bonds, or we could self-fund it through, interloan that the town would pay for.
Credit default swaps.
Yeah. There's a power purchase agreement that we're looking at, which would be a third-party financing agreement. So there's a number of things we need to look at, determine which is best for the town, most beneficial, and then once we have those in place, then we'll bring forward the final two systems, which are at the plants. Those are the 2 large systems.
Sounds cool.
So that's the
The
schedule.
only other comment I'd throw out in case it needs to be made or passed along to the board is the streetlight thing is the most obvious bang for your buck if we could get it done by giving you guys more resources to harass Excel.
Well, the ideal situation would be to get Excel to pay for it, right? Because then you'd receive the economic benefit without having to put any capital cost into it, right?
Sure.
Yeah, and if we could get them to a point,
Or you split it. or
like
you-
Fred's comment, as they're going out and
Doing
you got a
that.
burnout bulb, instead of just flopping in a new bulb,
They can't.
they
That wouldn't be efficient either, though. If they're going to do this, the efficient way is to buy all of those heads, those new
Yeah.
fixtures, and come in and
do it.
do it in mass.
So we're working through the.
But I can imagine a deal where we do, I mean, not that you want to volunteer if you didn't have to, but where you'd agree to pay a higher rate or something on, for a certain amount of energy so that they could reap part of the benefit that we're
Well,
reaping
that's
by
the-
spend by.
yeah,
'Cause
could
when
you-
you're 90%, you got a lot of savings to be had.
Well, yeah. Could you pay the rate for 1 year or something, right?
Plus the amount.
To
the
pay
rate.
You're going,
the going rate for that individual fixture for 1 year or whatever the payback is, to the point where it's paid for, but you didn't have to outlay the capital cost. It's just part of the monthly allocation, right? And then pay it down to the point where once you've paid it off, the capital part of it off, you receive the rate reduction on the usage, and you're sort of financing it that way,
Those have been discussions that we've had
Sure.
through this group, and it's just getting to that point where, because,
Conflicting goals.
Xcel Energy is going to take if this ever occurs, they're going to take a huge hit.
Well, what happens though for them is, as their demand increases because the city gets bigger, they don't necessarily have to upgrade infrastructure.
Right.
They're still able
Right.
to produce the amount of energy the
Exactly.
city needs without having to do their own capital upgrades.
I
right?
mean, I can imagine
Building
what
new
they
power
don't
plants,
want
right?
is for everybody in the Denver metro area to go do this, and all of a sudden they've got all this excess capacity that they can't sell. But if it happens, I can imagine them wanting to see it paced with growth in the metro area.
The gap goes taken up by wouldn't it be taken up by the potential, the growth that we receive here, which we will get?
Yeah,
I understand.
Denver's going to continue to grow, right?
Absolutely.
In Aurora.
Yeah, the Metroplex will grow. We are due for population increase. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yeah.
In my view, I'm could be wrong, but everything I
We can
read,
get that $200,000
everything
back.
that's on the horizon, and you're going to grow. Maybe not as fast over the last 10 years, but the next, we're going to grow.
Well,
But
and
Denver's
people.
poised to come out of this earlier, and that may attract
Is that
people
right?
here because there'll be jobs here.
Well, and the other thing is that the average household, just because of all our gizmos and gadgets, we consume a lot more. I mean, even though we may have certain things that are more efficient, we have more of everything per household to keep a demand on the system. So
Yeah.
the more you can be
More
taking
iPods you
your
get.
opportunities, the more you can take your opportunities to conserve, because people are going to turn around and have that extra computer running and have that extra refrigerator in the bar and all those things. We never seem to have, loss for that.
And personally, for me, I know this plan looks mainly as just energy offset. basically, but there's a greenhouse gas reduction component that's not stated in here.
Absolutely.
But something that we signed on with the county and the other cities, and is if we do this plan, we'll see a significant.
You'll be living up to your obligation.
Yes, exactly, thank you. So,
Cool, thanks for putting that
Anything
together.
else?
Yeah, very good.
no, thank you for your comments, and I'll get back to you with your questions that I need to.
I have one question, not on this, but, so what, based on what was decided about the land use code, are we going to have a meeting on June 16th?
Sorry. I was going to say, more than likely not, unless there's another item, just to.
Right, unless there's another.
It's going to take you guys
Yeah,
time to get your
we need to
arms
look
around the
at,
request.
What it will take to do a deletion document and compare, and we probably have a board discussion, I would imagine.
I was going to say, I'm assuming it's
Yeah.
not a done
Do
deal.
one, Trustee Sorelli at
Yeah.
the board meeting that was discussed, would be nice.
Are they having a meeting on Monday?
Yes.
Yes, but Joe's not going to be there.
Trustee
Okay.
Sorelli.
Well, if you end up bringing it up next Monday, drop me an email. I'll try to
Okay.
make it.
Okay.
Negotiate out
Oh,
a
God.
Jeff settlement.
I'll be gone the 30th. So that,
June 30th?
yeah.
no
I know that's a
meeting.
long ways out.
Me too.
No meeting on the.
But you'd be back
Wow.
for the July 7th meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll miss the 7th for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, and I have a conflict on the 30th.
30th, we don't have a meeting.
Oh,
Good.
Okay,
Okay.
so,
Yeah.
well, when's the
I maybe.
16th and then
Not till July 7th?
the 7th? Okay.
Yeah, because it's the 1st and 3rd,
We usually just
not
have two
every
a
2
month.
weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, 5 weeks, I think, if you and I are 5 Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Right.
I may be gone, just so you know, sort of the week of the 21st of July and the first week in August. So I might miss, theoretically, 2 meetings.
21st shouldn't be a meeting. 7th and 4th.
The
Oh, no, I'm
21st
sorry. Yeah,
of
you're right.
September,
It's
yeah,
21st.
I'm
I need to
July
I need to look at the
You're right.
dates, but it's possible I would miss 2
Send me an
meetings.
email.
21st
July.
of July.
Okay,
That's all.
adjourned.
And I'm sorry you didn't get those Word documents.
That's all right.
We thought you were just ignoring us.
I'll start spamming you. I don't get it. One o'clock.
I